First at 9 this Saturday, the 20th of December 2025. Financial aid. IMF Executive Board approves $206 million in emergency financial support for Sri Lanka. Disaster relief. President urges officials to ensure all disaster victims receive full compensation. Weather watch. Train services resume on the Badula-Ambevela upcountry railway line. Families in Kahawatha and Passara advised to evacuate over landslide risks. Red alert landslide evacuation warnings extended to Kandy and Norelia districts. Vaccine probe. India's MAN Pharmaceuticals requests independent testing of the suspended Ondansetron vaccine. Offers to bear the cost.
Kalin baby soap rupial 90කට. Kalin baby podi හැමෝටමයි.
This is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9, brought to you by Derana News Channel, Sri Lanka's most trusted news source. I'm Derana, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. We begin with your top story. The International Monetary Fund's Executive Board approved the disbursement of $206 million for Sri Lanka under the Rapid Financing Instrument Facility. IMF emergency support provided as requested by the government of Sri Lanka is expected to help address urgent balance of payments and fiscal pressures arising from the catastrophic cyclone Ditwa.
Is the money going into the central bank or the finance ministry? And also, do you expect GDP, any kind of shock on the GDP from your projection? Or will the initial shock be cancelled by the recovery?
Just wanted to follow up on the deferment of the EFF's fifth review. With the mission visiting in 2026, is there any timeline you can provide on how soon the next tranche of disbursements is likely to take place? And also, are you able to share when you're planning to visit in early 2026?
So on the first question about where does the disbursement go, so obviously that is up to the authorities. That is a discussion we had with the authorities. We discussed both with the central bank and with the government and the ministry exactly on where would the disbursement from the RFI would be most helpful. As you can understand, the gravest needs at the moment are around the budget and budget support. And so we have all agreed that in this case, the RFI should be used for budget support. So the allocation will end up with the Ministry of Finance. Our preliminary estimate, and that I have to caution the word preliminary, is that growth will likely take a hit in the short term. Now, short term could mean perhaps one quarter, could perhaps mean be even less. But we cannot really equate the growth rate with the economic loss, because economic losses clearly are going to be very, very important, and they're going to be sizable. And so how these are accommodated and what sort of response is going to be put forward will determine the growth rate. But so the growth rate itself is not a full picture. As you can understand, construction is likely to support growth during the rebuilding phase, and because of the size of the economic damage, this is likely to add to GDP considerably. But that doesn't mean, of course, that the country hasn't had a severe economic shock. In addition to that, we project higher inflation, at least for the short term again, due to shortage of selected food items and some supply chain disruptions from damaged infrastructure and import control and import ability. Equally important is also the external balance. We think that the current account deficit is likely to widen, at least for the next 6 to 12 months, due to the increased food and construction import needs, the lower agricultural exports, and potentially some reduced tourism earnings. So that will need to be calibrated, of course, because a lot of things can play out differently. We have taken good note that the tourism industry has gone out of their way to try to repair as quickly as possible and invite tourism back into the country, which is very positive. And of course, higher remittances are expected to partially offset some of these pressures on the current account, and we look forward to seeing this. Final on the question about 2026, yes, that's very well noted. Of course, I understand that you would like us to comment more on this, but this is something that we have to be very careful in finding the right time and the right mode. Of course, we are very eager to come. We have committed. We are going to be there in early 2026 as early as possible. This is something that we are prioritizing. Our full team is getting ready, and there is quite a lot of work behind all the infrastructure that we need to put in place for us to come and re-engage with the authorities.
So from the chat, it's Chihar asking about if the IMF is playing any role in the upcoming donor conference next month in Colombo for the rebuilding fund.
Beyond emergency financing, Ivan, I want to understand whether the IMF is considering integrating disaster resilience and preparedness into Sri Lanka's economic reform framework going forward.
So on the question on the donor conference, obviously we take positive note of this fact. So that's very important, and we think the authorities are doing the appropriate steps in mobilizing support from the international community. I should take a moment here to acknowledge that it's not just the IMF that has expressed strong interest in helping and offering our assistance, but also many other multilateral institutions, as well as bilateral donors and partners. I think that will continue. The RFI disbursement and the upcoming resumption of the discussions under the FF sort of underline how we tend to play a catalytic role, how we see our role in this donor conference, if you will, and not just in January, but at any point in time when we come and we discuss with everybody on the ground. So then we want to continue engaging and showing that the authorities are doing everything in their power to help the economy restore and achieve again resilient growth. And so that will continue sending the positive signal, us coming and discussing that Sri Lanka remains committed to macroeconomic stability and bouncing back. So on the question about climate resilience and beyond the disaster assessment, so obviously that's something that we always do. And I will give you an example. Not too long ago, in July of 2025, it's a few months ago, we had a PIMA mission, a public investment management assessment mission, coming into the country and doing a climate PIMA, climate assessment, recommending to integrate climate resilience into public investment planning. And this is very important because, if anything, this CPIMA, these recommendations of this exercise should be featured front and center in how the reconstruction and the new investment has to be laid out. So in line with these recommendations, the authorities are currently developing an appraisal and prioritization methodology that will incorporate climate resilience criteria to ensure that future public investment is better equipped to withstand the natural disasters. And that has many levels and many strata that needs to be laid out, as simple as how do you decide where new projects are needed, and as complicated as having a new unified building code throughout the country. We also explore reforms to strengthen Sri Lanka's climate resilience and disaster risk financing, and there we are working very closely with our colleagues at the World Bank, which have a lot of experts and have spent a lot of time on this.
The 30% discount on Apico Foam and Spring mattresses, available at Apico Supercenter and Apico Daily.
President Anu Dissanayake urges officials to ensure all disaster victims receive compensation. The President issued this directive during a meeting with officials from ministries, institutions and district secretaries at the Presidential Secretariat. A special discussion was held today under the patronage of President Anu Dissanayake at the Presidential Secretariat to review the district-level program aimed at rebuilding the lives of disaster-stricken people under the government's Rebuilding Sri Lanka Fund and address challenges that have arisen in its implementation. Secretaries from the Ministries of Defence, Agriculture, Irrigation, Water Supply, Fisheries, Transport, Housing and Construction, district secretaries, as well as heads of relevant institutions participated in the discussion. The President instructed the relevant authorities to ensure the government's 25,000 rupee allowance for house cleaning and 50,000 rupee allowance for household appliances is provided before December 31st. The President emphasized that assistance should be provided so that no one is left behind. President Dissanayake also inquired in detail about the district-level programs for resettling displaced people, rebuilding livelihoods, developing infrastructure and the progress achieved so far. He added that steps will be taken to prepare a separate plan for housing projects in the districts most affected by the disaster and reconvene a discussion with the participation of all relevant parties. According to the President's Media Division, the President also reviewed programs for the reissuance of destroyed passports and national identity cards. The Department of Meteorology forecasts heavy rains tomorrow in the eastern, Uva and central provinces, as well as the Polonnaruwa and Hambantota districts. Meanwhile, train journeys on the section of the upcountry railway between Badulla and Abewala, which was severely damaged by Cyclone Ditwa, resumed today after 23 days.
The northeast monsoon, which has gradually established over Sri Lanka, brought heavy downpours, prompting authorities to open sluice gates of several major reservoirs. With incessant rains pelting down, the irrigation department noted that 36 major reservoirs and over 52 medium-sized reservoirs across the country have reached spill levels. The heavy rainfall which occurred in the Batiklo district led to the complete inundation of Saraswati Vidyalaya in Kaluwanchikudi. Meanwhile, train services on the Badulla-Ambewala section of the upcountry railway line officially resumed this morning, following extensive repairs to damage caused by Cyclone Ditwa. Marking the inaugural journey after the restoration, a special Udaratamanike train departed from Badulla to Ambewala at 9:30 am. This is the first time a train has operated on this stretch in 23 days since the onset of the disaster. The railway department has arranged for multiple train services to operate between Badulla and Ambewala starting today. The occasion was attended by Minister Samantha Widiyaratne, Deputy Minister of Tourism Ruwan Ranasinghe and several other officials.
ලංකාවට ඇදී එන මාසයේ දෙසැම්බර් මාසය මේක වසන්තයේ මාසය මල් පිපෙන මාසය නිසා අපේ දුම්රිය මේ විදිහට ධාවනය කරගන්න පුළුවන්කම ලැබීම අපි කාගේ සතුටට කාරණයක්.
සංචාරකයෝ සහ දුම්රිය පාවිච්චි කරන වැඩි දෙනෙක් එන්නේ නානුවයට නැත්නම් නුවරඑළියට. ඒත් අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා ඒකාබද්ධ කාලසටහනට අනුව බස් රථ මගින් ප්‍රවාහනය කිරීමේ හැකියාව අඹේවැල දක්වා ලබා දෙන්න. ඒත් එක්කම තව දෙයක් කියන්න ඕනේ. අප්පෙල් වලට කලින් නානුවය බදුල්ල මාර්ගය අපිට විවෘත කරගන්න හැකියාව ලැබෙයි කියන බලාපොරොත්තු තියෙනවා.
In the meantime, the disbursement of the 50,000 rupees allowance provided by the government to purchase essential household appliances for residences affected by the disaster commenced yesterday in the Rambukpota area in Badulla. However, residents of the Udagaladebokka area in Nelumala village in Udattava claimed that they are yet to receive the 25,000 rupee compensation for the damages caused by the deadly landslides on the 27th of last month. The Divisional Secretary of Minipe arrived at the location to resolve their matters. Against this backdrop, restoration of a number of roads is still progressing. Meanwhile, the National Building Research Organization has identified several areas prone to landslides. In Al-Kadua area of Matale, around 58 houses have been subject to severe structural damage. Local residents have been temporarily relocated to Tamil College in Al-Kadua. Similarly, a section of a tea plantation in the Kawata area of Passara is also at the risk of landslides. As a result, authorities have informed around 20 families in the area to evacuate their houses. Taking the prevailing situation into account, the National Building Research Organization further extended the red warning level 3 landslide evacuation warning issued for several areas in the Kandy and Nuwara districts. The Department of Meteorology meanwhile forecast that heavy rains may occur in the eastern, Uva and central provinces and the Polonnaruwa and Hambantota districts. Showers or thunder showers are also expected in the Sabaragamuwa province and the Gol, Matara and Kalutara districts after 2 p.m. Recent adverse weather in the country has destroyed numerous farmlands, leading to a sharp increase in vegetable prices. Reports indicate that prices of low-country vegetables are rising significantly on a daily basis compared to upcountry varieties. According to the daily price index of the central bank, as of yesterday at the Peta, Dambulla and Narayanpeta Economic Centre, a kilogram of beans retailed between 600 and 800 rupees and tomatoes between 500 and 600 rupees per kilogram. Snake gold is being sold for between 600 and 700 rupees per kilogram. Green chilies retail between 1,100 and 1,200 rupees per kilogram, while brinjols retail between 550 and 800 rupees per kilogram. Carrots and cabbage meanwhile retail between 300 and 500 rupees per kilogram.
The Bar Association of Sri Lanka urges President Anu Desanayake to address pressing challenges facing the Right to Information Commission. In a letter, BASL President Rajiv Amarasuriya highlighted issues of understaffing and insufficient funding, warning that these threaten the Commission's independence and effectiveness. BASL opposes any amendments to the RTI Act that could limit public access to information and calls for consultations with both the association and the public before any changes are made. The CID has initiated an investigation into the unauthorized access of the Police Narcotics Bureau's vessel monitoring system used to track multi-day fishing vessels suspected of transporting narcotics. It has been revealed that the system was accessed from 57 different IP addresses and that sensitive information has fallen into the hands of narcotic traffickers. The vessel monitoring system, commonly used in the fisheries sector to ensure compliance and inspect equipment, has been extensively utilized to monitor multi-day fishing trawlers suspected of carrying narcotics. This has led to several major narcotic seizures by the Sri Lanka Police and the Sri Lanka Navy over the past few months. However, following information that sensitive VMS data may have been fallen into the hands of drug traffickers, investigations have been launched on the instructions of the Inspector General of Police. Investigations have revealed that the system was accessed from 57 different IP addresses, enabling unauthorized individuals to obtain sensitive information. Accordingly, a probe has been initiated by the Criminal Investigation Department under the direction of the Deputy Inspector General of Police Narcotics Bureau Ashoka Dharmasena to identify those responsible. PIN numbers of the VMS system have been changed to prevent external access and are now restricted solely to the Narcotics Bureau's DIG and Director. Meanwhile, 5 sub-inspectors attached to the Narcotics Bureau have been transferred with immediate effect based on information suggesting links to drug traffickers. According to Sri Lanka Police, the officers have been found in breach of duty. Police further stated that new officers will be recruited following thorough background checks. In the meantime, an asset and liability audit of all officers attached to the Narcotics Bureau has been initiated by the Police Special Investigation Bureau. The audit has been launched on the instructions of Deputy Inspector General of the Narcotics Bureau, Ashoka Dharmasena. At present, more than 400 officers are attached to the Bureau, and police said that asset and liability reports of over 20 officers have already been received. Police further stated that any officer found to possess suspicious assets or liabilities will be immediately removed from the Bureau. Investigations will be conducted and strict legal action will be instituted if wrongdoing is established. In a letter addressed to Sri Lankan health authorities, MAN Pharmaceuticals India, the manufacturer of the suspended ondansetron vaccine, has requested that the vaccine be subjected to independent testing at an internationally accredited laboratory, stating that it is willing to bear the full cost of the examination. Meanwhile, the Government Medical Officers Association claimed that tests conducted locally have already confirmed bacterial contamination of the vaccine.
The National Medicines Regulatory Authority has temporarily suspended the use of 10 medicines manufactured by MAN Pharmaceuticals of India in Sri Lanka, including the controversial ondansetron vaccine. The decision followed confirmation by the National Hospital in Kandy of bacterial contamination detected in the vaccine through laboratory testing. Similar concerns regarding the ondansetron vaccine have been reported by other hospitals. Investigations are currently underway into reports that 2 patients at the National Institute of Infectious Diseases died after being administered the controversial vaccine. Amid these developments, MAN Pharmaceuticals, in a letter to Sri Lankan health authorities yesterday, requested that samples of the vaccine be subjected to independent testing at an internationally accredited laboratory. In the letter addressed to the Director General of Health Services, the National Medicines Regulatory Authority, the State Pharmaceutical Corporation and the Medical Supplies Division, MAN Pharmaceuticals expressed willingness to bear the full cost of the examination. Chairman of the National Medicines Regulatory Authority, Dr. Ananda Vijay Vikrama, confirmed receipt of the letter. Meanwhile, the Government Medical Officers Association also commented on the matter.
පළවෙනි වාර්තාව එන්නේ මේ ඔන්ඩන්සෙට්‍රෝන් නැමැති ඖෂධයේ ගැටලුව සම්බන්ධයෙන් මහනුවර ජාතික රෝහලේ. විශේෂයෙන් රෝගීන් 7 දෙනෙක්. මේ රෝගීන් 7 දෙනාටම වැළඳිලා තිබ්බේ එකම විස බීජ ආසාදනයක්. දැන් සත්කාර ඒකකයක් ඇතුලේ එහෙම වෙන්න විදියක් නැහැ. පරීක්ෂා කරනකොට තමයි ඔවුන් හොයාගන්නේ මේ ඔන්ඩන්සෙට්‍රෝන් නැමැති ඖෂධය තුල මේ බැක්ටීරියාවක් අන්තර්ගත වෙලා තියෙනවා කියන කාරණේ. එතකොට මේ බැක්ටීරියාව රයිසෝබියම් නැමැති බැක්ටීරියාවක් විදිහට තමයි අඳුනගන්නේ. වැදගත් ඒ තමයි මේ රයිසෝබියම් කියන බැක්ටීරියාව ශරීරගත වෙන්නේ ප්‍රමිතියෙන් බාල නැත්නම් අපවිත්‍ර වෙච්ච වෛද්‍ය ශල්‍ය උපකරණ හෝ ඖෂධ. තාම මුද්‍රාව නොකැඩූ ඔන්ඩන්සෙට්‍රෝන් ඖෂධ කුප්පියක් තුල තිබිලා තමයි මේ විස බීජ ආසාදනය තියෙනවා කියලා තහවුරු වෙන්නේ. වෛද්‍ය සැපයුම් අංශයෙන් මේ රටේ සියලුම රෝහල් වලට සියලුම සෞඛ්‍ය ආයතන වලට යවලා තියෙන මේ චක්‍රලේඛයේ පැහැදිලිව සටහන් වෙනවා. ඒ ඖෂධ වර්ග 10ම මේ කියන බැක්ටීරියාව නිසා ප්‍රමිතියෙන් බාල වෙලා කියන කාරණය. බාල බෙහෙතක් කියන එක තහවුරු වෙලා තියෙනවා මේ වෙනකොට. මේ අදාළ මාන් ෆාමසිටිකල්ස් කියන සමාගම දෙසැම්බර් 19 වෙනිදා දිනය දාලා ලිපියක් නිකුත් කරලා තියෙනවා. මේකේ ඕන් බොහොම පැහැදිලිව කියන කාරණයක්. ඔබ වගකීම් මිරහිතව මේ අපේ සමාගමේ කීර්තනාමයත් එක්ක සෙල්ලම් කරන්න එපා කියලා. ඕන් පැහැදිලිව කියනවා මේවා පරීක්ෂා කරන්න ජාත්‍යන්තර මට්ටමේ රසායනාගාරයකට අරගෙන යන්න. එතකොට ඕන් අනිත් පැත්තෙන් කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? මේ රටේ මේ කියන ජාත්‍යන්තර මට්ටමේ රසායනාගාරයක් නැහැ කියන එකද?
The National Freedom Front's Vimal Weerawansa also commented on the importation of Indian manufactured medicines.
මොන අර්බුද තිබුණත් ඒ 76 වසරක පාලනය ඇතුලේ ওই බ්‍රිතාන්‍ය ප්‍රමිතිය හෝ ඊට ඉහළ ප්‍රමිතිය කියන එකෙන් පල්ලෙහාට එන්න ශ්‍රී ලංකාව කටයුතු කළේ නැහැ. එතකොට මේක කොළඹ නගරාධිපතිනි බල්තසාර්ගේ නංගි බැඳපු මහත්තයාගේ සමාගමකින් තමයි මේ ඖෂධ ගෙනල්ලා තියෙන්නේ. කවුද මේ අපද්‍රව්‍ය සහිත ඖෂධ ආයතනගත කරේ? මෝඩි මහත්තයා විල කරටත දාගත්තයි කියලා මේ චූන් වෙලා එහෙම ෆාමකෝපිය අස්සම් කරන්න බෑ. ඉන්දියන් කිවිසුම් 7න් එකක් හැටියට ගත්තා මේ ඉන්දියන් ෆාමකෝපියා එක පිළිගන්න එක. දැම්මා ඉන්දියන් අපද්‍රව්‍ය සහිත ඖෂධ වලට පමණක් ලංකාවේ ඖෂධ වෙළඳ පොලේ ඒකාධිකාරය හදලා දෙන්න පාලන මිලක් දැම්මා දොස්තර ජයතිස්ස. ඒ පාලන මිලට යටින් දෙන්න බෑ බ්‍රිතාන්‍ය ප්‍රමිතිය ඖෂධ. ඇමරිකානු ප්‍රමිතිය ඖෂධ කැමති වුණත් නැතත් ඉන්දියානු ප්‍රමිතියේ අපද්‍රව්‍ය සහිත ಔಷಧ පමණක් වෙළඳ පොලේ ඉතුරු වෙනවා. සල්ලි තිබ්බත් ඒව බොන්න වෙනවා, නොතිබ්බත් ඒව බොන්න වෙනවා. වහාම මේ ඉන්දියානු ෆාමකෝපියා එකෙන් අයින් වෙන්න ජාතියෙන් සමාව ඉල්ලන්න.
30% discount on Apico Foam and Spring mattresses available at Apico Supercenter and Apico Daily.
Moose සහ ෆීනික්ස් නත්තල් ෆියස්ටා නොවැම්බර් 13 සිට 16 දක්වා අනුරාධපුර ස්පොට්නික් ක්‍රීඩා පිටියේදී.
වසරකට ළමුන් 22000කගේ පාසල් ගමන මග නවතිනවා.
එවන් දරුවන් නැවත පාසල් යවන්න අභ්‍යාස පොත් පරිත්‍යාග කරන්න. සෑම පොතකටම ඇට්ලස් පොතක් අපෙන්.
Police spokesperson Assistant Superintendent of Police F.U. Woodless stated that enhanced security arrangements have been implemented across the country ahead of the Christmas season. He made these remarks during a press briefing today.
මේ දෙසැම්බර් මාසේ අපි උත්සව සමයක් සඳහා ප්‍රවේශ වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඒ අනුව නත්තල් සමයක් පැමිණෙනවා. එවැගේම ශ්‍රී ලංකා පොලිසිය විශේෂයෙන් පොලිස්පතිතුමා විසින් විවිධ වූ මඟ පෙන්වීම් සහ ඉදිරි ආරක්ෂාව පිළිබඳව යම්කිසි වැඩසටහන් කීපයක් මේ වන විට පොලිස්පතිතුමාගේ මැදිහත් වී සිද්ධ වෙනවා. ඒ අනුව සියලුම මූලස්ථාන පොලිස් පරීක්ෂකවරුන් සහ ස්ථානාධිපතිවරුන් ඒ අදාළ පොලිස් බල ප්‍රදේශයන්හි පිහිටා තිබෙන ආගමික සිද්ධාස්ථානවල නායකයින් හමු වී මෙම ඉදිරි කාලය තුල පවත්නා වූ සියලුම ආගමික වැඩසටහන් වලදී ආරක්ෂාව සැපයීම සඳහා ක්‍රියා කරනු ඇත. මෙහිදී මහජන ආරක්ෂක කමිටු මහත්මීන් ඒ වගේම ඒ ආගමික සිද්ධාස්ථානවල සිවිල් ක්‍රියාකාරීන් මේ සඳහා අපිට දායකත්වය ලබා දීම සඳහා පෙරමුණට පැමිණීම පිළිබඳ අපි ඒ සියලු දෙනාටම කෘතවේදීත්වය අපි ලබා දෙනවා. එම නිසා මේ උත්සව සමයේ විශේෂයෙන් නත්තල් සමයේ ආගමික සිද්ධාස්ථානවලට යන සහ විවිධ වූ ආගමික කටයුතු නිරත වෙන මහත්මහත්ගෙන් සහ මහජනතාවගෙන් අපි ඉල්ලා සිටිනවා ඔබත් මේ කටයුතු සඳහා අවධානයෙන් සිට යම් සැක කටයුතු පුද්ගලයෙකු එහෙම නැත්නම් සැක කටයුතු කණ්ඩායමක් හෝ සැක කටයුතු යම් දේපලක් පිළිබඳව ඔබට යම් චකිතයක් සැකයක් ඇති වෙනම් ළඟම සිටිනා වූ පොලිස් නිලධාරියෙකුට මේ සම්බන්ධව දැනුම් දෙන්නට පුළුවන්. මේ සියලුම ආරක්ෂක කටයුතු සඳහා විශේෂයෙන් අපි ත්‍රිවිධ හමුදාවත් සහාය කරගනිමින් මේ උත්සවයේ සමය ඊටාම ආරක්ෂාකාරීව ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්නට වැඩපිළිවෙලක් සකස් කරලා තිනවා. ඒ වගේම ඔබ ආසන්නේ විශේෂයෙන් සිවිල් ඇඳුමින් සැරසී සිටින පොලිස් නිලධාරියන් රාශියක් ඒ වගේම බුද්ධිල් නිලධාරීන් රාශියක් මේ උත්සව සමයේ ඔබ සමගේ ආරක්ෂාව සඳහා යොදවලා තියෙන අතර ශ්‍රී ලංකා පොලිසියේ විශේෂයෙන් අමතර නිලධාරීන් බස්නාහිර පළාතේ 2500කට අමතර නිලධාරීන් පිරිසක් මේ විශේෂ ආරක්ෂක වැඩපිළිවෙලට දායකත්වය ලබා දෙනවා.
Welcome back to First at 9. Now taking you to more local news, opposition leader Sajid Premadasa claims that the government is now endorsing measures it had previously ridiculed when they were proposed by the opposition. He made these remarks while participating in a program organized under the SJB's Husma initiative.
Under the Husma initiative of Samagi Janabalawega, medical equipment valued at 2.9 million rupees was donated to the Aranayaka Divisional Hospital today. The event was held under the patronage of opposition leader Sajith Premadasa.
අවතැන්වුණු නිවාස අහිමි වුණු මේ සියලුම දෙනාට ආරක්ෂිත ඉඩම් තුල නිවෙස් සදා ගැනීමේ අවස්ථාව අපි උදා කරන්නට ඕන. මම දැක්ක පහුගිය කාලෙත් මම කියනකොට දහනපතියන් සම්බන්ධ කරගෙන පාසල් දියුණු කරන්නට ඕන, රෝහල් දියුණු කරන්නට ඕන. ඒවා ඒ ඡන්දේ කාලේ ඒවා විහිළුවට බාරගත්තා. නමුත් දැන් මට ආරංචි වෙනවා දැන් වෙනමම පැකේජ් හදනවා දහනපතියන්ගේ උදව් අරගෙන විවිධ ආයතනවල උදව් අරගෙන සහන පැකේජ් හදනවා පාසල් දියුණු කරන්න. මේක හරි. ඒක ඉටු විය යුතුයි. දැන් මේ රෝහල වෙනුවෙනුත් විදේශීය දහනපති ආධාර හරහා තමයි අපි පරිත්‍යාග කරන්නේ. එදා කරපු විවේචන Tamanටම ගිලගෙන නැවතත් වරක් ඒ දේ හරි කියලා ඒ දේම ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙනවා කියන එක පාර්ලිමේන්තුවටම ඇවිල්ලා ජාතික ප්‍රතිපත්තියක් හැටියට එළි දැක්වුවා. ඉතින් මේකයි කියන්නේ සත්‍යය කවදා හෝ ජයග්‍රහණය කරන්න.
Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya stated that intelligence has been received regarding drug trafficking operations centered around universities. Speaking at a recent event, the Prime Minister called for an immediate halt to the violence, harassment and the covering up of drug-related activities in universities.
A program to educate undergraduates against bullying, harassment and drug abuse in universities was recently held at the Ministry of Education, chaired by Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya.
රැග් එකත් එක්ක බැඳිච්චි මත්ද්‍රව්‍ය සෑම විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයකම නැත්නම් සෑම අධ්‍යාපන ආයතනයකම බහුතරයක් මේවට ඇබ්බැහි වෙලා ඉන්නවා. නීතිය තියෙනවා. මත්ද්‍රව්‍ය ඇතිව අත්අඩංගුවට ගත්තොත් OIC කෙනෙකුට ඔහුව රිලීස් කරන්න බෑ. අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම මජිස්ත්‍රාත්වරයෙක් විදියට ඉදිරිපත් කරන්නම වෙනවා. සමහර කට්ටිය නේ විශ්වවිද්‍යාල ළමයි සමහර කට්ටිය ගන්නවා නේ ගංජා ගන්නවා අරව මේවා කරලා ඉවරලා අපිට කතා කරාට පුළුවන්ද? බෑ කරන්න දෙන්න නීතියක් තියෙනවනේ. ඒ නීතියෙන් පිට වැඩ කරන්න පුළුවන්ද? බෑ.
මමත් පේරාදෙණිය විශ්වවිද්‍යාලය ඉගෙන ගන්න කාලේ මේ නවක වදේ කියන කරුණට දැඩිව භාජනය වෙච්ච පුජ්‍යලෙක්. හැබැයි අපිට තිබිච්ච අත්දැකීමක් තිබුණා නවක වදේට බඳුන් වෙච්ච අය මේ නවක වදේ දෙන්න ගියේ නම් දශම ගණනකින් තමයි. හැබැයි මේකෙන් ශිෂ්‍යයන්ට හෝ එහෙම නැත්නම් සමාජයට හෝ අපි හිතන්නේ වඩා පොසිටිව් එකක් මේක ඇති වෙලා තියෙනවා කියලා.
2025 දිත් අපිට මේක
It is disappointing having to discuss ragging in 2025. It is concerning to think that ragging is considered necessary to maintain university culture. Everyone from vice chancellors to the non-academic staff claim that ragging does not occur in their universities, yet students continue to die or drop out of universities. Who witnesses this? I question whether we can even label the latest incidents as ragging, as they clearly constitute acts of violence and abuse. Tragically, students from economically disadvantaged backgrounds are most affected. How can we approve of this? We must definitely intervene. We have received intelligence reports on universities and faculties that have become centers of drug trafficking, including the details of individuals involved. If we fail to act, the university system cannot be saved. Political differences may exist, but they are not an issue in this case. I urge all to halt the cover-up of narcotics use and the abuse and violence perpetrated in universities in the name of ragging. Let us work together, setting aside our differences.
ඒක නවත්තන්න මං ඉල්ලා සිටින්නේ අපි එකට වැඩ කරමු අනිත් සියල්ලම පැත්තක දාමු.
With that, here's a look at the latest developments in the political sphere today.
රංගල මහත්තයා සම්බන්ධ චෝදනා පිළිබඳව ඔහුට බේරෙන්න සහාය දුන්න බව කියමින් පොලිස් නිලධාරීන් විශාල පිරිසක් අද විනයානුකූල ක්‍රියාමාර්ගවලට ලක් කරලා තියෙනවා. ආණ්ඩුව හා සම්බන්ධ යම් තැනැත්තෙකුට නීතිය ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙනවා නම් එවැනි අවස්ථාවක ඒ නීතිය ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන පොලිස් නිලධාරීන්ට එරෙහිව කටයුතු කිරීමේ ඉතාම නරක තත්ත්වයක් ඇති වෙලා තියෙනවා.
ආණ්ඩුව කියන නීතිය සැමට සමානයි කියන නීතියකොයි සැමට සමාන. හිටපු කතානායකට එක නීතියකුත් අනිත් අයට එක නීතියකුත් එහෙම වෙලා තියෙන තත්ත්වයේ නීතියත් සමාන නැහැ කිසිම දෙයක් මේ ආණ්ඩුවේ සමාන නැහැ. ජනතාවට කිව්ව දේවල් සියල්ලක්ම ඉෂ්ට වෙලත් නැහැ.
අනේ යාට ක්‍රියානතුර වුණ ගමන්ම ප්‍රෙෂර් වැඩි වුණාලු. එතකොට එතුමා ගියාලු කිරිබත්ගොඩ රෝහලට. පොලිසිය එතනට යනකොට එතුමාව අරන් ගිහිල්ලාලු ජාතික රෝහලට. ඒකයි කරගන්න බැරි වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. ජාතික රෝහලේ එතුමාගේ දරුවා වෛද්‍යවරයෙක් විදිහට සේවය කරන බවට තොරතුරක් තිබෙනවා.
රංගවලගේ මත්පැන් පානය සම්බන්ධව මට වැඩිය මට රංගවල විශ්වාසයි. ඇත්තට අපි කොහොම මොකක්ද බීලා හිටියයි කියලා මම බීලා හිටියයි කියලා කියන මිනිහෙක්.
Donations are steadily coming in from around the world for the Manasat Derana relief operation to support school children affected by the recent adverse weather. Generous donors have been arriving at the TV Derana head office around the clock in support of this cause. Dr. Ratna Pereira and his wife Deepthi Pereira, Sri Lankan residents of Boston, Massachusetts, visited the Derana headquarters to extend their financial support for the Manasat Derana relief program. The donation was graciously received by Executive Director of the Derana Media Network, Madhava Madhavala, and Chairman of Mansad Derana, Mahesh Jayawardena. As part of the relief effort, school supplies were distributed to students of Nimala Maria Vidyalaya Tudala and children studying at Kapugoda Purana Viharaya. Now taking you to business news, United States President Donald Trump announced new agreements aimed at lowering prescription drug prices. Alongside leaders of leading pharma giants, President Trump yesterday announced deals that would cut prices on their medications to match that of the developed nation with the lowest price.
Under the deals, each drug maker will cut prices on some of the drugs sold to the Medicaid program for low-income people. U.S. patients currently pay by far the most for prescription medicines, often nearly 3 times more than in other developed countries. Trump has been pressuring drug makers to lower their prices to what patients pay elsewhere. The details of each deal were not immediately available, but officials said they included agreements to cut cash-pay direct-to-consumer prices of select drugs sold potentially through the TrumpRx.gov website, to launch drugs in the U.S. at prices equal to, not lower than, those in other wealthy nations, and to increase manufacturing. In return, companies can receive a 3-year exemption from any tariffs. In July, Trump sent letters to leaders of 17 major pharmaceutical companies outlining how they should provide so-called most favored nation prices to the U.S. government's Medicaid health program and guarantee that new drugs will not be launched at prices above those in other high-income countries. So far, Pfizer, Eli Lilly, AstraZeneca, Novo Nordisk, AMD Serono and the U.S. division of Germany's Merck have struck deals with the administration to rein in prices.